AV Life is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, Audinate, Crestron, Panasonic, and Sennheiser. Thank you so much for your support.
Greetings from Kansas City. This is Renee Benson at AV Renee KC. You are listening to and watching the AV Life.
Hello, everyone. Murphy is here, Director of Project Management for productions across the U.S. And I'm coming at you from Southern California, where it's finally getting sunny outside. You're joining us for the AV Life.
James King here, writer for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, the IT and AV column, HEPMA board member, co-host of Best the Programmer. You Google me, you'll find me, and you are watching and listening to AV Life.
And I'm your host, Tim Van Wert from Rutgers University, from HETMA, from higheredav.com, and from coming at you from the wonderful state of New Jersey, where we hit an ultimate high in temperatures today. And you are watching and listening to the AV Life. Yeah, we broke records today. No, here in New Jersey, the warmest April 6th that there ever was. So as we are recording here today, yes,
what was that?
Golf claps. Yeah. So
what was the number?
82, I think where we finished up today.
Warmer than in Vegas right now. It's only like 67.
And then just for Prex, just so you all know, because just so you don't forget that this is spring in New Jersey, tomorrow our high is 59. So just putting that back into perspective, that we're not quite out of this yet.
So we always start this show with the weather.
Yes.
What you got, Tim, is what we had 2 days ago. And then we had overnight tornadoes and thunderstorms. And then yesterday we had 50. And today I think it's maybe 50 again. So
those tornadoes and rain are coming like now. Like it's supposed to be raining and everything. I mean, I'm down, as always, I'm down here in my basement, so I have no idea what's happening up top. So well, I guess if a tornado comes by
here in Los Angeles County, it is Southern California. It is an unbelievably long stretch of snowy mountains. Still.
Awesome.
All the way out to, I've spent the first part of this week in the desert. And even out there in Indio, Coachella, there are still snow on the mountains. I expect it will disappear by Sunday. But we'll see. It's very strange, very weird weather. I mean, you had some kind of record. This has got to be a weird record.
So before we dig any further into our weather our weather forecast here, let me bring our guests in so she can chime in, because I'm not alone on the East Coast right now. James left me, so you know I
might not be on the East Coast, but I will always be from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. But our guest tonight is an up and coming rock star here in the AV world, a true powerhouse of women in AV. Britt Yenser, welcome to the AV Life. How are you doing tonight?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm great. I have off of work tomorrow, so it's kind of like Friday. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So this is the perfect way to kick off the long weekend here with us on the AV Life. Yeah, and as I alluded to, you're here over. I know you're in Pennsylvania, but I still include that on the East Coast because I'm between you and the ocean, so that's okay. But tell the listening world a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
All right, great. So I am at Brave Brit. I am a writer along with James for Higher Ed AV. My column is Somehow I Manage. I also recently launched a new podcast called Brave Space. And when I'm not doing those, offline side hustle shenanigans, my main job is to be the director of event technology at Moravian University, which, as Tim alluded to, is in Northeast Pennsylvania.
So yes, I am not alone here on the East Coast this time. Sorry, go ahead, Murph.
How can we find your podcast, Britt?
It is everywhere you listen to podcasts.
And higher
And
ed
also
website, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is also on the Higher Ed AV website.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
Right.
yeah, so Britt has, I will say, you have frog splashed into the AV world. This is, you've made a cannonball into
yeah.
this. You dropped in and you've made the waves. And I don't think there's been any other AV tweep that has made an impact the way you have.
It's fast.
Like you jumped into Twitter not even 2 months ago. It was
In
February, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, it was February, and you've taken on the Twitter world by storm, I feel like. And now you started with your office referenced titled article, and now you've got your podcast and your first guest. And I'm Murphy, we're gonna get around to that PM minute, but I feel like this is working too well. So your first episode just dropped today.
It did. Yeah, with guest Tammy Fuquay.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And
What a
Tammy's
perfect-
we love Tammy. She is a multiple attendee here on the AV Life.
One
So,
of our
and I
favorites.
think if there were, that was probably, she's an incredible guest to have, especially for your first episode as well. So
Yeah, it was incredible. I loved getting a chat with her. It was the second time I got to collaborate with her. So originally, and how this really all started was I was driving into work one day and just kind of had a brain blast of Women's History Month is coming up. And there's a glaring red flag in my industry that I represent in this vertical, in that there are not a lot of women present. So why don't we have a conversation about that? And we can talk to the students about that. We can open it up to everyone, because our events often are not just for students, faculty, staff, but we open them to our communities as well. So I went to our DEI office that morning and said, I have an idea. What if we did a panel of women in AVIT for Women's History Month? And they said, I love it. We'll do whatever you need us to do to support you, but like take it and run with it. So I hosted that panel in March, and Tammy was one of the panelists. And I noticed at the end of the webinar, there were all these comments flooding in the chat about wanting a part 2 and feeling like we had just scratched the surface. And I thought we could do panels over and over again, but is it always going to feel like we're just scratching the surface? So why don't we pivot to a different platform? I made a podcast.
So yeah, and that's where Brave Space came in. And so what are you targeting with? I know we talked a little bit about this, before we started recording, and you've kind of started discussing that, but let's go a little bit deeper into what topics are you kind of looking to hit, and what do you think, what are you looking to accomplish with the podcast?
Yeah, it's really just a space to have tough conversations. And it's called Brave Space for a reason, because there's a difference between a safe space and a brave space. So a safe space is one in which the goal is to be completely non-judgmental and to really be as, I guess you could say, PC as possible. Whereas a brave space, like naturally you want it to feel safe and warm in a way so people will open up and have a conversation. But a brave space encourages some conflict. Like the point is to have dialogue where the search for knowledge is paramount. So it's less about your comfort and more about the need to have the discussion. And so since this was coming off of a Women's History Month panel, and that was how this was born, I'm focusing primarily right now on women in the industry, toxic masculinity. And I've had the next 2 episodes are actually going to be male guests, Joe Way and James King, because one thing we don't talk about enough is how toxic masculinity also negatively affects men. So, just issues like that, safety and stories about things that have happened to people at trade shows. And of course, like anything that people want to bring to the table, I'm happy to have a dialogue.
That's awesome.
I think that's great. And I particularly like what you're saying, that it's not a space to be protected. It's a space to express yourself and tell stories. I think I was having a conversation amongst some people that I know about, toxic masculinity is a fine topic, and it can be brought up for sure, but there is such a thing as toxic femininity too. And I think feminism should be helping me become more the best woman that I can be, not just talking about how I've been wrong, but how can I do better? And it's a whole thing.
Mhm.
And I love that might be a space to go into that. Like, well, what do I do as a habit, as a woman? What's kind of some stereotypical things that I and other women do that could be discussed and analyzed and maybe discarded?
Yeah, because again, it also hurts us. It doesn't just
Yeah.
hurt the other gender, but it does a lot of, self harm to the person who feels like they need to portray those behaviors.
Yeah.
And the one thing I kept taking from the interview with Britt, and the difference between a brave space and a safe space, is a brave space puts you, if it's done well, and I think Britt does a very good job at this, puts you in a growth mindset where you learn and you grow as a person, instead of just having this safe conversation, being PC, but you don't actually learn and grow.
Well, that's how, that's that there was that there's that you only grow like if things like by like breaking a little bit, like that's you break, you heal, and then you get stronger. It's like that constant, which it sounds ugly and it sounds, what's the word I'm looking for? And I'm lost for it, but it's a necessary thing to do.
Right.
It's like make that old also like that old adage, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Like you gotta
Right.
to get to that point, you gotta get messy.
Well, and you have to fail in order to succeed. You have to go through your
Correct.
failures in order to get to the succession. So
Hmm.
this is great what you're doing, Brett. I can't wait to listen. I think it's great you started with Tammy. She's been fighting so hard to do the same kind of thing, but I think that having a different perspective, and even just you saying brave versus safe, how cool is that? I've never really thought about that till you had your podcast names, and I was like, that's a big deal, because
Mhm.
there is things that happen in our industry. I mean, I heard some stories from the ISE show, and it takes a brave person to stand up to the person doing the wrong things, or stand up, from Infocoms before, where we had certain behaviors that weren't accepted, and it's like it takes a brave person or persons to step up and say, hey, this is not what we're going to tolerate. Like, here's what
Mhm.
and we have a great group of men in our industry that are on our side 1000+%. So I think this is great timing. I think it's great. I'm excited to get to know you, and I've been kind of following you on Twitter, doing my little stalking thing behind the scenes. So I'm excited to see where this goes. That's great. And thank you for being here too, to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. I'm very excited about all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be very well, go ahead, Murph. What?
Don't forget, the best part of Brave is it's got an A and a B. Ooh.
I love that in
Yes.
your logo, that the A and the V are like capitalized and it's right there. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see where you're gonna go with this. The conversations, yes, like you said, they're not gonna be easy, but
Yeah.
they're gonna be needed.
Need to be had.
And that's from past experience with different podcast things and past issues that have come up within our vertical. That's the only way you see real change, is by bringing them to light and having those brave conversations. Because I think we've had the safe conversations before, and that doesn't get us anywhere. Excuse me, let me clarify that.
Yeah.
It gets us somewhere, but in order to get over the top, that's where you gotta move out of that comfort zone and into the brave space. So
Right. Yeah. And I've noticed I've recorded 4 episodes now, and so far I've stuck to relatively the same questions, because you can ask those same questions to a million different people and they will all have a different answer for you. So that's one thing that's really interesting about this, is everyone's going to have their different take on toxic masculinity. Everyone is going to have their own story about something that happened to them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this can just keep moving forward.
Not to quote our own James King, because he is here on the podcast, but one thing he always talks about is putting action to our words, right? And actually, like what HETMA and Higher Ed AV, it's like they're actually putting actions behind the things that they say they want to do. And this is just another step in actually taking an action to go, hey, listen, we're going to take the next step on this issue in our industry. So that's great.
Cool. All right. Well, so outside of the of your world in higher ed and all that, and I mean, I've gotten a small glimpse of this only because of the tweets that you and I have shared back and forth. So tell us a little bit about your, I guess you could say the things you enjoy and outside of our little AV community. I know you're a little bit of a sci-fi person out there.
Yeah, a little bit. I
Do
don't
tell.
know if it's so much sci-fi as it is horror.
Okay, horror.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like just the very like weird old obscure horror, and I get to experience that a lot. So and oh my gosh, Tim, you're on the East Coast, so you should come visit this. The Mahoning Drive-In Theater in
Okay.
Lehighton, Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
is one of the oldest theaters in the United States, and of course, drive-in
Mhm.
theaters are also like dying, so there's that. But they never upgraded to digital, so all of their films are on 35 millimeter film.
Ooh.
No
It's
way.
delightful. And
Oh,
because you
that
have
sounds
to
awesome.
watch on film, you're getting those old movies. So I get to watch all my weird old horror movies at the
Wow,
drive-in over the course of the summer. That's one of my favorite things to do.
that's cool.
I was to say I'm not far from the classic Warwick Theater.
Oh,
That's in New York, and that's another drive-in. Then they still do the old school double feature. You could drive in and get two movies for the price of one. And
Mhm.
I haven't been up there in years. But yeah, I always enjoyed that classic. We had actually had an episode talking about a little bit about that. Oh geez, about a year ago now, I think we had that episode. We brought in some folks. We talked about
Oh, I remember that.
movies and
Yeah.
projection, and yeah,
Relative.
my
Yeah.
Oh,
my
your
cousin's
cousin.
an independent filmmaker, and he actually a lot of his he makes his own sci-fi movies, but he bases them on those classic sci-fi like Thing and the giant ants and those
Mhm.
like that's what he focuses on. And well, and to toot my own horn, I'm now in two of his movies, but that's
Nice.
Different kind of
but
horror.
different kind of horror, yeah. Um, but yeah, so I feel like we have to revisit the cinema conversation again now too. So
Well,
that's really cool.
in a little slight turn, um, Britt, do you enjoy reading?
Oh, yes. So I earned my bachelor's degree as an English major. So I am a reader. All sorts of things. I try to balance between fiction and nonfiction. I just finished reading After Aiton, which was about Aiton Pates, the little boy who went missing in what was it? 1979, I think it was, from New York. Really interesting, like fascinating read, also very sad. I won't spoil it for anyone, but it's a tough read, but it was very interesting.
Hmm.
Well, since you like horror and sci-fi, I would like to recommend, it was made into a movie, but it's a really great book as well. John Dies at the End. It's kind of comedy, horror, sci-fi.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's one. And I found it interesting. And also not horror-ish. I just finished reading and it blew my mind. I finished reading for the second time, and I don't usually reread Children of Ruin by
Hmm.
Adrian Tchaikovsky. His
Hmm.
number one book in the series. I happened upon it like by accident. I misheard the title and thought it was something else, but it blew my mind away, and it's really good. Sci-fi is dystopia. I tend to not like it because of that, but I'm like, I don't need dystopian life. I want something more epic and heroic. But this one had the Earth is going away. Somebody goes off and tries to terraform a planet, and what they find there. So it talks at the beginning of the book. It talks about the past, and then it shoots between the past and the present, which has to do with these different human and human adjacent characters going to this one planet. And it talks about so many amazing concepts, because when I was listening to it was an audiobook, blew my mind away. And because I happened on it by accident, I thought it was Children of Hurin, which is by Tolkien, but I misheard it. So then I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And it totally blew my mind away. Totally talking a lot about I could go on for a long time. I won't.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's awesome.
It's all
Murphy-
good. I wrote
Murphy's
them
our-
down.
Yeah, Murphy's our book guru, so
An
it's
author.
yeah. Oh, and she actually has a book as well. Speaking of, four
Four
books.
books.
But you have one in process.
5 now, that 5th one. And I've been working on it pretty hard. I was kind of slogged down, but now I'm like more into it. I've been working on it today, and I expect to look for it coming soon when I finish it and get it out there. The AV Project Management Handbook.
Soon.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
great. And it won't be too long. It's a nice little compact, probably 150 pages. So not bad, with very practical tips. Anyway, got to finish it first.
We've been promoting her
Yes,
book
we
that
have.
hasn't even been brought into production yet for quite a while now. We're all waiting with anticipation for it. So
Yes, me too,
yeah,
but not waiting. Anyway, working on it.
working on it.
Yeah.
So well, and then all right. Well, Murphy, you still have the stage, so you know what? We'll before we get too far into any other conversation, what do you have for us this week on our PM minute? Because we missed out last week too. So
I'm sorry. Yes.
no, that's okay.
Interestingly, I want to talk about time, because time waits for no man, and time can get away from me. Time can get away from all of us. And when I am choosing to do one thing versus another thing, that's me taking the time in the direction that I chose. I chose that. I didn't, oh, I forgot. Oh, this. No, I chose a thing instead of another thing. And I would prefer to be intentional in my choices. And sometimes I'm not. It does not help me to hide something important in the fog. So making my choices, projects are tied to time. In fact, that's something from the PMI book of knowledge. The project management book of knowledge is the 3 constraints: time, cost, and quality. Time is really, really important. So me being aware of time and using time intentionally, having my priorities straight is really critical. So as a project, time is always important. It's ticking, and I have to make choices. I can't fit into the time more than the time will hold. So I have to make choices, and that requires intentionality. Time
Cool.
going somewhere with or without me.
Yeah. That's very true. I've always felt priority, and I know priorities are priorities, but I feel like priorities are very flexible as well, because depending on where you are in the project determines what those priorities are. But yeah, time is time. Like that, like I agree. Like that is what it is. Like it doesn't magically, you don't get that 25th hour in a day, which I'm sure we all would love to have sometimes, but that doesn't happen. So yeah,
Days a week.
I like that.
I think us higher ed folks understand the concept of how important time is, because as I know I've said this to numerous integrators, I know I'm not alone. Classes start when classes start. We can't change that. So you have to be on time
Especially
or there's
in
bigger problems.
higher ed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so question. Do
Mhm.
you all time box?
Explain what that is.
I was gonna say that's the first I've heard that term, so this is not looking good for me.
I think Murphy knows what it is.
Yes, I do.
Pretending on my screen froze.
What?
Why don't you give your definition of it, Britt?
Okay, so my definition of time boxing is to strategically block off your calendar with designated tasks that you intend to do at that day and time.
Mm.
I say I want to do that, and then my ADHD kicks in, and it doesn't end up happening. So, yes, I'd like to. I like to do that more because I feel like it would give me the structure I need to be more successful at my job. But
Okay, I have done that, but then I pick up a call or somebody calls on Teams and you pick up a call and it's like, well, I better take this call. And all of a sudden,
Discipline time blocking says
hard.
no calls, but it
Mhm.
depends on the priority of the time box.
Yeah.
True.
So
Yeah,
I
it's hard.
I started to do that because I'm noticing I'm getting pulled in many directions, and trying to get things done has been very challenging. Like some things have gotten, I'll admit, fell through the cracks as I tackle more and pressing matters. And like today, I had on my calendar I was supposed to go to one site to do some work, so I had it on my calendar, but I actually ended up getting pulled into a higher priority issue during that time, but I still got to what I needed to get done. I got it done, but it was later than I planned on it.
Mhm.
As a project manager person, the time boxing happens when I schedule a meeting with somebody. So like if I'm trying to get an answer and people don't get back to me, like, well, a time box is like, I'm going to set up a meeting with you, person, and get the answer that I need. And sometimes it's a matter of talking the person through their decision. Like, oh, I have not answered because I'm unresolved about how I should answer. And then I talk them through to get to the answer. And that creates a mandatory time block because I'm not getting off the phone until they tell me, right? So that's one way of doing the time box. But it's also sometimes discipline, because if I myself want to do a certain thing and make up in my mind, I can't rely on somebody else kindly stopping me and making me answer. So having that is, having time boxing discipline and skills is next level stuff.
My whole thing is, and the reason I do it, I know it does not work for everyone. I have people who look at my calendar and tell me that if that was their calendar, it would give them a stroke. But I am very strategic. I fill my whole day because if you don't set your schedule, someone else will set it for you.
Yes.
And I cannot have people adding meetings to my calendar back to back to back. Like, I'm sorry, meetings are not work. Like, I need time to actually get something done.
So meetings to me is if meetings are done well, then they're done, it's beneficial. The problem is most people don't do meetings well. And I chop it up to a meme I saw a couple years ago where they're all sitting in a conference room and the boss or person leading the meeting goes, "We all are going to stay here until we figure out why no work is getting done." And so that just shows
That's
that,
right up there. That's right up where with the beatings will continue until morale improves.
yes.
I
And
used to have a T-shirt that said that.
We're not going anywhere until we figure out why we're not getting anything done. Like, wow.
Yep. So meetings, the deaf
You're asking
meetings
me to
have
lie to
been,
you.
yeah, like I love I even wrote about this. I was saying I love the people who say, oh, this meeting could have been an email that could have been a text message. The problem is people are having meetings just to have meetings because they think that's what they need to do. And meetings are, if they're done, they're structured, you have an agenda, you get that job, that mission that meeting is supposed to cover. And that's the thing is, you also got to, when you have that meeting, you have that agenda, make sure you stay on the topic of that meeting. So doing that time blocking, like Britt and Murphy mentioned, where, okay, our meeting right now is to talk about, work performance. And someone starts talking about, hey, I need to go, I'm having a problem installing a projector.
Let me start
Oh,
talking about
that's a separate meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, bring it back, focus. And then if you can get meetings done in half hour instead of these hour long, they're beneficial. They can get things done, bringing everyone together. The problem is no one runs meeting correctly.
Yes,
And
I rephrase my
Mhm.
statement to bad meetings are not work.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, and
Yeah,
I
there
got
you go.
I got smart this last couple weeks because we used to have meetings with, we have our staff meetings every week, and some of the guys would just dredge on and on and on about things. I gave everybody time slots. I said, you get 5 minutes. That's it. It's like if you can't articulate what you've been doing over the last week in less than 5 minutes, you're just babbling. So,
Yeah.
and that actually worked. We got done for the first time on time in like weeks. It was great.
So that's good, Tim. But now thinking of this as on the negative side, could you be hampering an employee who might need to be saying things that might take longer? If you
Okay.
know,
Okay, James.
If I felt,
go
I
Murphy.
tend to give those people, I put them lower in the agenda anyhow. So if we do need the time, but I'm trying to keep them on point for it. Because usually because what ends up happening is my boss goes, is there something else that somebody wants to talk about? And then we get off on a totally other tangent that goes another 15 minutes. So if they have the time slot, and we put our agenda items on the agenda beforehand too, so it gives
That's
people
key.
an opportunity. Yeah,
So-
it gives people an opportunity to prep themselves with what they're going to talk about.
That leads into what I wanted to say. So I recently came up with, like, okay, I've always had an agenda, but now for a status meeting for my team, I go and put what each by staff person, what they own and what I want them to report on. And so I keep that going. I keep that as a meeting, and I send that out the day before saying, this is the agenda for the meeting. Please update with the status and be prepared to report. And it went from like an hour and a half down to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And everybody knows exactly
Wow.
what's happening. And then at the end, after everybody's given a status on everything, then I say, open to everybody. Do we need to bring anything into this meeting? But we've already set the tone for concise, educated information.
Yeah. So what I like going with a team meeting, and I'll admit I got this from my current boss. This is not something I was doing anytime before this, but we have a team meeting twice a week, me and my two workers, and it's a recurring calendar invite time slot, and in the description of the calendar, the details is a link to agenda, and it's a running agenda. So each meeting gets its own section in the file, but you can go down and say, okay, well, last meeting we talked about this, and then we need to bring this into this meeting, and we modify the agenda as we go. But yes, we stay on topic, but then we know everyone is constantly adding to it as we need to.
That's great. And that it's also crowdsourced. People can give their targeted information and edit it.
No, I
So
actually
meetings
found
Yeah.
it very
can be
useful.
useful.
Keep it on topic, because I'll admit I'm someone who can ramble on and do that squirrel. Let's go down this rabbit hole, and then it's like, all right, wait, we got to bring it back. So it's been helpful keeping things on topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I will say though, we did the ongoing Word document that had the agendas and stuff like that in it, and it became a little ungainly because you got to be like pages upon pages of it. So when I actually this time we're trying folders and doing the individual agendas dated by the week. So that way,
Nice.
well,
What
at least they're smaller documents to,
So what I do with mine is again, this is what the workflow was when with everyone else. So I kind of just went with it. Is each month it's its own document. So the first meeting of the month, I go in and change the link to the agenda. We use Google Sheets and all that stuff. So each month, like April, like it'll have its own sheet and have all the notes and stuff on there. And then May will get another sheet. And yeah, I'll copy things if I need to from the April into the May, but then at least we have a history, we have the archive, the files don't get too big.
I don't know if it helps with Tim's earlier point about asking at the end of the meeting, like, is there anything else? And then you're lost. I like to end my meetings by asking what's missing, because I
Exactly.
feel like that helps them to stay at the task at hand, but be able to recognize if there was something about the particular topic we didn't get to cover.
I also think that's a more pointed instead of the open-ended anyone has anything, everyone's like, yeah, no, we don't. It's I actually I'm trying to think of where I read this, even with like doing PowerPoints or doing a Q&A, and at the end going, does anyone have any questions? No one ever has questions. And they actually, the part I read says rephrase it and go, I will now take your questions. You're giving them permission to give questions.
That sounds very regal.
Phrasing and wording.
I will now take your questions.
Yeah. So you're setting the tone, saying questions. Yeah. Instead of going, anyone have any question, you're like, it's kind of a wishy-washy tone. But if you're saying now I'll take your questions, you're setting tones. Questions are expected.
I like that. Yeah, it's it's saying that, or like saying, I will now open the floor for questions or something like that, where it's,
I usually say, does anyone have anything they want to bring into this meeting? Because sometimes it's not a question. Sometimes the team needs to give information like, hey, I just got an update that this particular piece of equipment needs this kind of firmware. And that's not a question, that's information.
Yeah. And like Britt was saying, anything that's missing, that's like, those two wordings are great in meetings like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to call it in my fraternity, we used to call it comments for the good of the brotherhood. Yeah, and that's well, because that's where it was. It was like what's those last things that need to be said, whatever it might be.
I should
So
come up with a term like that. That's great. We need some goofy things.
Well, and that's where when you say for the good of, at least then you're hopefully putting a positive spin on it to get that conversation going in that direction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool, Murphy. Thank you. That took on a life of its own. And thank you to Britt for the follow-up question. Yeah, we heard that, James. Yeah, we heard the car alarm.
Sorry, I finally found the mute button once.
That was you. Oh, that was you.
Yeah. No, it wasn't
my
call. I muted the call knowing you guys were hearing it.
I was like, wow, you set off your own car alarm. That's impressive.
No, didn't do that.
I do it. It's okay, James.
Very cool. All right. Well, I will leave it. I will do it this way too, since we're discussing it this way. Any other comments for the AV world at large?
So I actually have one. Britt, if someone wanted to be a guest, or how do you go about finding guests for your podcast?
Yeah, so right now I made a spreadsheet of like tasks associated with the podcast and stuff. I just made a list of people to reach out to, so I'm just doing the active outreach. But people are also more than welcome to reach out to me because that would be awesome. It makes me have to think less. So just send me a DM on Twitter and I'll send you the booking page.
Nice.
Awesome.
I'm
Cool.
excited.
All
I'm
right.
excited to watch.
Oh, well,
how
I
it goes.
guess I think I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna let you answer it. Are you going to Infocom?
Me?
Yes,
Indeed. Yes. I
indeed.
actually am speaking on a panel at Infocom. It's going to be on Thursday, and we're discussing uh, essentially classroom budgets and doing audiovisual work in higher ed on a budget. And otherwise, I'll just be, floating around doing the Infocom thing.
Awesome.
Oh my, that's gonna be a
Cool.
good one.
Yeah,
That's. I think
I think I have
Aaron's
that
in
one.
on that one too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So another one of our awesome women in
Yeah.
AVIT and
Mhm.
AV Rockstar and multiple
Seems
guests
to
on
be
the
a
AV Life as well.
seems to be a theme, right? It seems to be a
Yeah.
pattern.
So, yeah, and we as we kind of alerted to, and if you didn't listen last week and you missed out on it, Sharp NEC Display Solutions is sponsoring a happy hour in conjunction with HETMA and the AV Life on Wednesday, June 14th at the HETMA booth at Infocom. So come by. We are going to be, the booth number is 4489 from 3 to 5 p.m. Wednesday, June 14th. So come and hang out with us and meet the AV Life crew and, meet up on all things HETMA related and otherwise. There will be swag. I don't know what that swag will be yet, but there will be swag. So
And
since
AV
we're talking,
selfies. Lots of AV selfies.
and there will be AV selfies. So, and I'm looking forward to meeting people in person again that I haven't seen in like a year. So,
year.
or never, or ever.
Forever.
Yeah. No, I'm already having like FOMO with people being at NW Met. I
Let
mean,
me tell you,
I saw
yeah.
some of these at MCUAV, and I'm like already seeing other people. I'm like, oh man, I wish I was there. And it kind of am there because one of my team members is there, so I'm living through him right now.
Oh yeah, Frank's there, isn't he? Frank.
Well,
and
Frank,
he's
and also a guy who actually reports me is
oh okay.
there. Yeah. So
Yeah, Frank presented today, I think too. So, or yesterday. It was one of those
yesterday,
two.
yes.
It was
Yep,
yesterday.
Frank presented yesterday, but yep.
So, yeah, I've been
So-
seeing all that, and that's like this was like a week of conferences, like and I know as Joe is always traveling, but Joe is traveling all week, and I think Ryan's with him as well. Ryan Gray is
Yep.
with him. So
Yep,
Yeah.
Ryan's there, and
Some cowboy
Frank's
hats,
at
some
a lot
without
of
cowboy
places.
hats.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I forget those. Hawaiian is where it's at. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah.
Forget about Cowboys. It's a Hawaiian. That's all.
If
Okay.
you know, you know.
If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you'll find out at Infocom. Unless Joe spoils it otherwise.
Well, that's Joe.
Oh, that's Joe.
Yeah.
Hashtag
So-
it's always Joe Way's fault.
It's always Joe Way's fault.
So Britt, you're new to the podcast scene. You're new
Mhm.
to the Twitter scene.
Mhm.
You're doing awesome, but I think you have a seasoned host in Tim. You have seasoned folks like Renee and Murphy. You have any questions or anything you want to ask?
One thing that I ask as many people as I can who are actively involved in podcasting, writing, etc., is how do you balance being just present and unplugged and having like an actual life with these things. And like I'm personally really big into like work life integration. Like I recognize that there's never going to be a balance, like these things all go together. But I also like I was hesitant to join Twitter for the longest time because I was like, do I need one more thing to look at on my little computer thing? Like
Mhm.
I don't know, part of it is a little exhausting to me. So your pro tips for unplugging.
Well, I was gonna say you're saying it's me, Renee. This is all James, because James is
Both
actually
of you guys.
well.
Well, he's
So
already asked me this question on the
okay,
podcast, so
all
listen
right.
to
So I'm
that
not gonna
episode.
I won't spoil it. Yeah. So, for me, it's just really committing to that time that's not related to anything. You know, like we were talking about beforehand, like I've got my Rutgers stuff, I have this, I have my coaching things with my son, and I've got family time with them, and our schedules are always booked. So me stepping away from the podcast and Twitter world, as easy as it is to have it in my hand and have access to it all the time, sometimes you just need to shut off that notification and just let it go. And then yes, you'll come back to that big red, 20, it only goes up to 20 on Twitter. And that's where it stops. You get that 20 plus, and that's all you see. And then yes, you have to go back and scroll, but it's almost a commitment in a way. And you just need to make that time and not get sucked into that rabbit hole of oh, it's been an hour and a half and all I've done is just looked at Twitter. And then, but on the flip side also, I know I also need to make more time to promote the podcast as well. I do our weekly tweets and stuff like that, but I need to do a better job at just getting it out there in general. So there's the balance is yet to be, for me, even after 2 years, it's hard to get that balanced out. So I still struggle with that. So it's an ongoing growth, as we were just talking about earlier. So
I would say intentionality. Do what it is that is most important to you. And it's not a matter of like trying to spread yourself. What James said, being very present with what you're doing, and then do all that, and then all the next thing. And they say multitasking is a myth. So yeah.
So
What about you, Renee?
Renee?
You're muted.
Yeah.
You're muted.
I think that it's, you think of some of this stuff that took up time in your life before, like a 30-minute reality show or a 30-minute show, that how much it means to you, or shut the TV off and go, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes doing just this thing. And sometimes you have to limit yourself. And like, for example, AV in the AM, I would love to every Sunday join all 5 of the questions and reply to everybody. That happens to be the day where it's like, this is my day for me or for my family or whatever. And so I get to read a lot. I don't get to participate a lot. And that's a choice I make. It's not because I don't want to be a part of it. I do read, I do try to, but that's something that I need for me. I need that day for me. But if I can't sleep and I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes and set myself an alarm. Let's just go see what the AV tweets are doing. Let's go hashtag AV tweets, go see what the latest is. I just find that keeps me connected to my people. And, one of the things, I think Tim was the creator of hashtag AV family. I'm just one who ran with it and won't let it go.
Oh yeah.
But,
Well, I think it goes back to Corey a little bit too.
It does.
Because he called me his brother, from the beginning. So it was.
Yeah. And then I think having the pandemic where we couldn't see each other for a while and nobody was traveling. And then, oh my gosh, we've all got to we were on this podcast for how long together? James and Tim lived in the same state, granted far apart, but in the same state, they still had to go to an infocom to meet each other. So for
Mhm.
me, it was like the anticipation of, like, Britt, like, I feel like I'm already kind of connected to you because I've been watching your tweets, and I'm like, it's only been a month or a month and a half. And I'm like, I feel like I've followed this whole journey from the naming. Should I do a podcast? It's like, and now it's here, and so there's kind of that connection that you have. So when you meet, you're kind of like, oh, I know Britt, we go way back, and that's kind of how when we get together, it's like, oh my gosh, this is my family. Yeah, I've met him one time, so it's kind of funny. And there's a lot of people you'll meet on Twitter, and I'm sure you're already seeing who will interact with you more than others. And
Mhm.
some are going to be late at night, some are in the middle of the day, some are early morning, because that's when they can fit it into their schedule. But for me, it's always been about building relationships and building on the relationships that we've already established. So that's important to me. For
You're so
for
good
my
at relationships, Renee.
Oh, that's important to me. And, I mean, I'm in sales, and I mean, I believe in what I'm selling, but I also believe that people buy from people they trust and that they respect, and that's who they have a relationship with, right? I mean, it's all kind of one big circle that kind of comes back around. So, and Britt, I go, not to get into my background, but go way back to where it was really tough for women in my industry in the Midwest in a good old boys network. And it was really tough. And today I'm very thankful for the people who are paving the way for the people who maybe don't have to go through what some of us went through, 25 years ago or 20 years ago. So to me, again, it's all about relationships and keeping yourself out there. And I don't know, I think end of my soapbox, sorry.
That was helpful. All good
Yeah.
tips. I guess my biggest fear is, one, I don't want to be too sucked into it in a way where I lose the intentionality, like Murphy said. And two, like, I also don't want it to be what gives my brain dopamine, because like that's a
Yeah,
real thing.
right.
Like people are really relying on the little red indicators to be like, and now I feel things. And like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, you do have to be kind of diligent. Like if I say, okay, I'm going to 15 minutes, and then I don't care what the subject is, I have to shut it off. It's hard to do that, but
Mhm.
you're right. Because I'll tell you what, if I'm traveling and can't sleep because I'm in a loud hotel room or something, and it's like, it would be nothing for me to just and scroll and look over and go, oh, I've been doing this for an hour and 10 minutes. This is ridiculous. Renee, get some sleep. So you really have to be diligent in setting kind of those guidelines for yourself. And you're right, not letting it get too deep.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good.
My friends,
All right.
I have to go. I
Bye,
have to
Merv.
go take my daughter to karate. But it
Yeah.
was
Great
really great to
meeting
meet you,
you.
Britt. And I hope to speak some more and hear what you think of the books I recommended.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Have a kick butt time.
Thank you. Bye.
See
We'll
ya.
see you soon, Murphy.
The the one thing I wanted to say, and I wanted to put this out on a public forum like this, is Britt is a good example. I know today's been a lot about Britt, but she's a good example of someone where the door has been open and she just plowed through it
Mm-hmm.
and took it by the horns and is running with it. Because many times doors are open for folks and they don't go through it. So like Britt, being the person you are and you're, blowing up, because I feel like, yeah, I've done kind of the same thing where a door was open for me and I ran through it. But I also am a person in privilege that can do that. And I also have a little more tailwind than some other folks. So how does someone like you go through that door and make the waves that you are making? And how can someone who is looking to do that do something like that?
Well, for me, it comes down to almost a sense of trust. And I think that if you can navigate a sense of trust that is a little bit more open and a little less earned and more just like kind of given. And where I'm going with this is, if someone trusted me enough to open the door, then I have to believe in that trust and I have to walk through it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good.
That's really good. Yeah.
So, if someone gives you the opportunity, you have to believe that they gave it to you for a reason
Mhm.
and go for it.
Trust it. Trust it till it's not there. Yeah. That's awesome.
I was
I'm
gonna
so
say,
glad you were
I
here tonight. What a great
yeah,
episode.
definitely. Yeah, this is perfect timing to have you here today and to have you part of this conversation. And we all look forward to where you're gonna go with this. So it's all really, and I'm sure it's exciting for you as it is for the rest of us on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate it. It is exciting and also terrifying a little bit, just a little.
yeah,
I think you have to be terrified when you
Yeah.
break out and do something new. I go back to Joe, and when he invited me to write for the higher ed, I'm a horrible writer. My spelling, my grammar is horrendous. And he reached out to me and he's like, "Do you want to provide a monthly column?" I'm like, "You're joking, right? Like, why are you coming to me? Like, I got no." And my articles have been on other things that, like, we came across without Joe or I even knowing. It was talked about on SPOV TV, like one of my articles I wrote. Like, so it's people are definitely reading it, and it has made me a better writer, I feel, of getting out there and just doing this monthly. So I do think you have to be a little scared and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And like abandon the idea of it being perfect too. Cause like you can't do
Right.
your 100th article or podcast episode. That's really, really good. If you don't do your first one, that is not so good.
Yeah.
So.
And you're gonna have good ones, you're gonna have bad ones, and for me, because I took this podcast over, like I had to take over for Corey, who had a medical issue and was not able to continue with it, and then Joe graciously picked it up and made it part of the higher ed AV group. The first thing was that it was like, you want me to run this podcast? It was like, I had been a crew member with Corey for like a couple of years at that point, but like I, self-esteem issues here. And that was like the thing. And then, and now it's 2 years later, and we have our great episodes. Like, I think this is a great episode. We have our other ones that honestly don't match up, but they're still good, but
Yeah.
they're, not everything's going to be a hit, but I what I don't even know I forget what the term is, but yeah, I always question myself, and I always, wonder if I'm doing a good job, if I'm matching Corey's legacy, and I shouldn't do that because I'm creating my own. This
Right.
show is not what it was when Corey was running it. I've and I have James and Renee and all the rest of the crew to thank for that. And we have wonderful guests like yourself, Britt. So it's like it's gonna be what it's gonna be. And you just gotta keep on moving, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
As
doing a
the
great
Disney
job, Tim.
well, thank you. So um so I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of timing and of this podcast in specific, we're pushing an hour now. So we're gonna and yes, I see Renee needs to take off as well. So we're gonna close up shop here for this week. Britt, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. This is wonderful. I wish you all the best of luck with your podcast. Welcome to the higheredav.com family of podcasts, because I think we could say that we have a family of podcasts, because you're now 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. You're the fifth.
Yeah.
Because we have the Super Friends, we have Across the Pond, we have Joe's, we have this, and yeah, you make 5. So
Awesome.
Excellent.
yeah. So yes, we are a
Keep
family
going.
of podcasts. Yeah, family of 5.
I love that. Thank you so much.
No
I'm
problem.
excited.
And to my crew, thank you as always. Oh, and Britt, before I let everybody go, one last time, where can people find you out there in the socials?
Okay, so Twitter is at Brave Brit, and there's an underscore in between Brave. So it's Brave underscore Brit with 2 T's underscore. And then I'm Britt Yenser on LinkedIn.
Cool. There you go. Go find her, folks. And you can always find she is attached to our tweets from tonight. So you can always find us and then find her and then make sure you like, follow, and all that. And as I always say, till our next adventure.